reach. How goes it? You know, living the dream, baby.
Yeah.
Living the dream. Someone's got it.
You got a chair, plenty of elbow room.
Yeah. One arm's distance, no one's going to come on.
Yeah. I think you're usually pretty safe with that.
Yeah, I suppose.
Kind of.
Nobody wants to come on anyway.
Well, I mean, just being a big guy. You know, I don't even think about it, but I never got any flack. Not that I was deserving any flack, but you know, I see these other scrappy little guys, and people engage them if they feel disrespected or whatever. And I look back and they just maybe not.
Not this time.
Maybe not. I'll find the little guy. Is this what conversion therapy in here?
Vape.
Vape?
Jewels. Oh, yeah.
Well, very
How are
good.
you? Hello.
It's like this.
Ron, how are you, sir? Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, things are good.
One of the night we were driving home from downtown about 9, and they had open blocked off out there. You know, they had shooting. I was wondering if they called anybody else.
Not from us, no. They got people that do it. Yeah, that's they're still looking for the people on that one.
So Stan was
Stan Stojkovic?
State Department study traffic.
Yeah, sure.
They were doing that, so I thought this would make a good addition.
Oh yeah, Stan's good. That's good. Yeah.
Well, this sounds like this is going to go.
I think the big question is whether or not they want to ban it on the beach. That's going to be, that's how I anticipate most of the conversations going to be around whether or not. Because right now they still allow smoking at Water Beach. No, I think actually even in the park right now. Yeah, so it would be include vaping or ban it altogether or just
If they stop it, somebody's there sleeping.
Because my research was just, you know, they sell nicotine. It's just too hard. We can't test the nicotine in a little pod, so they could. So yeah, no, I anticipate it to be.
This summer sometime, it's the
I've heard some states wanting to go to 20 for tobacco in general. So, yeah.
Well, the feds are working on it too. So wouldn't that run if they put that on the back over?
I'm assuming they would do a vaping too, I would think.
Your lawn needs mowed.
It got mowed finally. I'm at the mercy of the DPW.
I'm sure, right?
But no, it did get mowed. Yes.
It did.
It was a little out of control for sure. So, it's looking better now.
Yeah. I guess we're just waiting on the rest. Yeah. There he is. Speaking of the devil, here he comes. Hi.
All right, it's good to see you.
See you. One job, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know when to link to this one. So.
And they do So in my mind,
That's a long time.
The baby one. Much longer.
yeah.
Very loose.
All right, I'm calling this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Tonight we're going to discuss legislation limiting the sale and use of vaping devices, accessories to minors, and prohibiting vaping in public spaces. We have several residents of the community present, as well as Chief Nimmer. Rebecca, how would you like us to proceed?
I think a good place to start would be to review the memo and maybe introduce some of the people that we also have present. We're fortunate to have Director Christensen of the North Shore Health Department who's joining us this evening, and a member of the Health Board for North Shore Health Department, who is been the primary drafter of a number of attachments that have been included within the cover memo that you received this evening. So she will be best apt to address any of the health department related questions regarding the prohibition of electronic cigarettes and smoking in public spaces. So we could probably start out by introducing her and have her review any highlights that she would like to proceed with. The last end of the cover memo deals with the discussion where the staff would like the committee to weigh in as to whether or not e-cigarettes and smoking should be banned in the beach. We pulled out an excerpt of the village code that specifically relates to prohibiting smoking on all municipal premises, but excluding parkland, which from our village attorney's interpretation would also potentially accommodate the beach. So we wanted to get some clarification on that as well. But is it okay if we introduce Director Christensen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the best place to start.
Excuse me, am I the only one who's not hearing the,
No, I can't
No,
hear
we
her.
can't hear either. That's the property.
We'll try to speak into the microphone a little bit.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Is this working? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, I'll speak loudly as well. So thank you for this opportunity to come back and talk about electronic cigarettes. I was approached, as you see from the memo, in early mid-April about this situation, and did research connected to the American Lung Association, as well as the tobacco-free suburban communities in Wisconsin. Sue Martin is the organizer of that, to get some information. I've also been in touch with a number of other local health departments in Milwaukee County about their processes and procedures for including e-cigarettes in their local clean indoor air policies. So drafted a memo for you that Manager Ewald mentioned was in your packet in terms of some of the situation we have. We've got some data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey demonstrating that electronic cigarette usage has gone up substantially among youth, both in Wisconsin as well as Shorewood. So that's definitely a concern for us. We know from other cigarette policies that these clean indoor air policies are very influential in terms of decreasing use. That's shown in the decrease in cigarette smoking prevalence over the last 10 years or so. So it is a natural next step to include e-cigarettes in the general provisions to exclude tobacco products in public places, and that's what we're recommending today, that the village board proceed with that. I'll stop and answer questions.
Well, first off, thank you so much for your memo. We
Sure.
appreciate it. I just want to, sorry, trying to get close to the mic still. I want to make sure that we're including everything that we can here. I noticed we go back and forth in the nomenclature from e-cigarette, vaping,
Right.
electronic smoking device. I'm assuming electronic smoking device. I'm assuming informally you're using e-cigarette to cover everything, and in the actual ordinance we're using electronic smoking device to cover
That
all
would
of
be
those
true,
different-
right, and any future iterations of what those products would look like, yes.
Okay.
That's a good question, though. There's also current terminology that students are using, dueling. You might hear these products described as dueling, they're now called soaring devices. So the device names change, but electronic devices would be a generalized terminology for the future.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So with regards to our, us being approached to ban smoking and electronic smoking devices,
Yeah.
our use of electronic smoking devices in parks, including Atwater Beach, how widely, are you familiar with other municipalities that have taken that step, and can you report to us on that?
Sure, I have reached out to colleagues, and because of the jurisdictions of the beaches, they're under the county control for
Right.
most of our local beaches, so they don't have the latitude to be able to pass smoke-free ordinances. So there aren't, to my knowledge and to my colleagues' knowledge, other smoke-free beach ordinances that are out there along our coastal line in this area. So we would be one of the first to do that.
But it makes sense because ours, we own ours.
You have the power to
The
do
county
it,
isn't
yeah.
going to do that.
And just in terms of other outdoor spaces, so even just yesterday we got increasing advocacy for smoke-free Summerfest grounds. We know Miller Park is now smoke-free. So there's a movement toward other public spaces being smoke-free as well, especially places where families congregate.
Okay, and they are outdoor spaces?
They are,
Because I
yeah.
imagine that the reason why they weren't included in the past is just because they're not enclosed, so you can't establish that there's that same secondhand smoke risk.
Correct.
But I think it is widely accepted as a nuisance and
Correct, yeah.
Unappreciated
Right.
or undesirable in open spaces.
President.
So just going off of Trustee McKay's, it's a great question. Do you know anywhere outside of Wisconsin then, I mean, is it prevalent in Florida or other places that may have taken the lead?
You know, I honestly haven't researched outside of our area. I certainly could bring that information back to you in terms of smoke-free beaches on other coastal areas, but I
That would
don't
be
know that
helpful.
right now.
And then also, just for the county, they have not adopted this at this point, correct?
Correct.
So like Estabrook Park and Beer Garden, things like that, it would not apply.
That would be a question for Nathan, but I would assume that's correct because that's their jurisdiction is the counties.
Okay, and do you have any idea of why they have not embarked upon that ban yet?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Just to build off President Rose's question, I'm just kind of curious. You know, I read the memo and I read kind of that electronic cigarettes also produce sort of, I'm using this as an informal term, secondhand smoke, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Has anybody, when these municipalities have passed laws, has there ever been any meaningful challenge to these laws? Has anyone ever objected and said, hey, this is?
And not that I know of. I've heard from colleagues in Greenfield and Wauwatosa where these ordinances were passed, and there hasn't been pushback from that perspective. I know the city of Milwaukee, the vaping shops pushed back a little bit, and so they have a carve out in their local ordinance that smoking or e-cigarette usage is allowed in vaping shops. But as far as I know, that's the only pushback that those communities have gotten.
That's a great point, because I assume that...
Could you speak into the mic?
Oh, I apologize. I assume that the big push for banning cigarette smoke was, in public places to begin with, was the secondhand smoke. Because
Correct.
you can do whatever you want on your own body, but are you affecting other people in the public space? So I just never heard e-cigarettes actually had secondhand smoke,
Yep.
and now it's been confirmed.
Correct. They have the device releases product in the air. It's not smoke in terms of tobacco smoke, but there are products or particles in the aerosolized vapor that can then be ingested by other bystanders and people. So there's increasing research around that area, and in the memo I included a reference from just a recent report that came out with that information.
And if the state by any chance legalizes marijuana in the future, would you recommend the same ban?
I believe the way the ordinance is written would apply to any liquidized marijuana in terms of that marijuana wouldn't be able to be used in an electronic cigarette device in a public space as well.
Okay, thank you.
Do any other trustees have questions?
I was just going to ask you to see if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak.
That's going to be my next move.
Great.
I'll step back in case there are any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have several members of the public here in the audience. I'd like to invite the public to offer an opinion at this point. And as you come to the podium, please open with your name and address.
My name is Rod Depew. I live at 1818 East Shorewood Boulevard, Unit 308, Shorewood, Wisconsin. I believe it is notable that a 2017 and 2018 school year survey from the Shorewood School District showed 30% of high school students used an electric vapor product at least one day during the previous 30 days, while only 4.4% of Shorewood high school students smoked cigarettes during the same period. So I think we can see which direction our youth are going. In comparison, data from the 2019 Wisconsin Youth Tobacco Survey showed 20% of Wisconsin high school students were using electronic cigarettes. In contrast with the 2017 Youth Risk Survey showing 12% of Wisconsin high school students had smoked an e-cigarette on at least one of the previous 30 days. This is an alarming increase in less than 2 years. This data shows a great percentage of Shorewood high school students using electronic vapor products or e-cigarettes when their peers throughout the state something we should all be concerned about, since, I mean, we'd like to see our students excel in a lot of things, but I don't think in being the leaders in e-cigarette smoking. The data cited has been reported from research done by Ann Christian, Health Director Officer of the North Shore Health Department, who spoke, and Chief Nimmer of the Shorewood Police Department. I have discussed this issue with many Shorewood residents, some of whom are here this evening, to support passage of this legislation to protect the health of our youth. I have also visited and talked with several retailers who sell vaping supplies and e-cigarettes in Shorewood. I was told that Walgreens plans to change the age of sale from 18 to 21 by the end of the summer. I've contacted corporate and haven't heard back from them yet to verify that. I also noted that of the retailers I visited, all keep their products with their cigarettes behind the counter, which I think is very important. Some of the stuff I've read implies that the vaping equipment is kept with the candy. I didn't find that with any of the retailers I visited. I hope you and the rest of the board will support this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any other members of the public?
My name is Kit Byrne. I live at 4411 North Prospect Avenue in Shorewood. I've lived in Shorewood for the last 42 years. I'm here solely to support Rod's point of view. I've read about it. I've seen things in the national media about the effect of vaping or e-cigarettes on people. This is a type of product that is not well regulated. And there's a great deal that's not known about the effects of it on people as well. And I would encourage you to adopt the legislation he proposes.
Thank you, Kit.
Hello, my name is Chris Paterka. I am a Shorewood resident, and I'm also your representative on the Board of Health for the North Shore Health Department. I'm at 4244 North Ardmore. I'm not sure if I have to say my address. So I'm here in support of Ann and in support of everyone else here as far as passing this ordinance. Just a couple things just on the public health concern. It is really concerning how much this has increased in our young kids. There has been nothing like it in the history of tobacco products or any nicotine products in the history of that use that we have seen such an exponential explosion as we've seen in our kids in the past year or two. Federally, this is a huge issue. The public health issue mainly is tricky. It's a little bit of a needle to thread because on one end, we do not want to support initiation of any types of products like this. There's some evidence coming out now that kids that start to vape may eventually go to tobacco. Fortunately, we have non-normalized tobacco use to the point that kids still think cigarettes are gross. But there still is that potential that could happen. They are still inhaling nicotine. It is something that's addictive. Juul and all of those companies love that because addiction is one of the best marketing strategies out there. The other side of the coin is that, yes, there is some evidence that e-cigarettes help people stop smoking. So, you know, you don't want to get rid of it altogether because, of course, smoking is the number one reason, number one preventable lifestyle behavior that we have that causes death and illness. So it's a tricky thing, but I think we can do some things in our village to help support not having the presence of vaping in public, in public spaces, or also on the beaches would be one thing we could do to try to mitigate misuse among our kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Seeing none, I mean, from my perspective, and Rebecca, I know you're looking for, are we looking for a motion on this, or are we looking for, I would support, I'm certainly in support of this, and I think I'm also in support of extending it to the parkland. I don't know how other trustees are feeling, but I think this one's kind of a slam dunk. I think that it's, that it makes sense, given what's in our packet, given the health effects, to support this ordinance and recommend this ordinance to the village board level. So I don't know what to say. Is this something where we make a motion, or is there need further guidance on park? I'm assuming you need further guidance on parkland.
Yes, I'd like direction on both. First, the draft ordinance, and then second, the group's direction and any guidance with respect to the parkland and the beach.
A motion would be great.
I'll make a. Oh, go ahead.
All right, so you're saying that you want this all done with a motion, Rebecca, or?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have actually a couple of questions in regard to this first.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my understanding is it would eliminate the potential for all individuals, including adults, to use vaping equipment in public spaces, and you're proposing including beaches and parkland.
Yes.
Okay.
And in terms of parkland, I guess before I make a motion, I guess my question would be, I know you had said, do we need to include Atwater Beach or not? My worry in including Atwater Beach is if we refer to parkland elsewhere, and we don't specifically include Atwater Beach, almost by inference, we're excluding Atwater Beach. So if we consistently say parkland includes Atwater Beach, I don't know that we want to break it out here unless we do it very carefully.
My understanding is that the existing language makes a direct exclusion of Atwater Beach or something?
All right, well, in our, the village attorney has recommended that it be helpful to specify including the beach area in Atwater Park within any ordinance that comes forward, if it is the committee's desire to recommend that it be prohibited from the beach area.
I would support it prohibiting I would support both motions that are in our packet, essentially. Go ahead.
Why don't we take it one motion at a time then? First, I move to recommend the draft ordinance.
And you should clarify to the people here that this is a recommendation to bring this to the full board, not that we have the power of this committee to pass.
Right, as Trustee Bachhorst said, just to make we're recommending, this is a recommendation to the full board. We don't have the power to pass the ordinance here tonight.
In this committee,
But when we do, make a recommendation to go up to full board for passage then.
for discussion, consideration, and potential passage.
And just
Sorry, I skipped a couple steps in there.
And just for a point of clarification, if you look at the draft ordinances in your packet, it currently says all municipal premises excluding parkland. So if you want to include parkland, the adoption of the ordinance as written would not be what you were doing.
Oh, so in that case, we want the second motion.
But is that because our parkland isn't controlled by us?
It just is how the ordinance was written currently. So in the packet, it's just how it's written. If you want to include parkland in Atwater Beach, then you'd have to.
From an enforcement standpoint, do you have any opinions on including or excluding these areas?
Not from an enforcement perspective.
Okay. Or any other?
President Rosen.
I just want to make it so I'm clear when it gets to full board. Can we prohibit e-cigarettes in parkland beyond Atwater Beach if we don't control that parkland? Does our municipal ordinance trump county ordinance?
No.
No.
Okay, so is that why our attorney is saying, as it's written, and then include the word Atwater, and include Atwater Beach, because that's the only other parkland that we would own?
No, that, the way the ordinance was originally written, it excluded parkland. So in the draft ordinance, as it was initially written, it was formatted on the existing language that we had. It was at that point that staff then inquired as to whether it was the village's intention to exclude parkland from the county. No, we do own it. We own our parkland.
Just Atwater Beach. We don't own that strip.
That's not in the village. So it's only when we look at this ordinance, great clarification. When we look at the ordinance that's before you tonight, it's only with regards to village-owned parkland. That is the only parkland and beach that you are allowed as a local body to regulate.
So could we specify village-owned parkland? Because I'm assuming that our Triangle Park, or that's village-owned. So if you just, I'm just trying to get the language right, if you just include, if you say parkland in the village, then that's including the county, if there is any, because there is none, right?
No, we don't have to, correct. We have no county parks in the village.
Well, we can make the ordinance contingent upon approval
And
from
then-
the village attorney
I have
regarding
one more
the
question, I'm
overall.
not done, thank you. And so if you just said village-owned, then it would cover, it would also cover Triangle Park, if we created one in the business district, like a small pocket park, it would cover all of those, correct, for the future?
Well, the language that's in there right now states all municipal premises.
Right.
You know, so
Okay.
you may not even need to address parkland or beach altogether.
Yeah.
It's just that for some reason in the past, parkland was excluded. So that's what generated the question from the staff perspective, is the beach separate or the same?
I think based on that, I think I think I can make a motion. I think I'll move to recommend the draft ordinance with a revision to strike the words excluding parkland.
Thank you. And
I
would,
think we need a second before we end.
I'm holding my second because I want to add something.
okay, so yes.
Motion fails for lack of a second.
I would like to make a motion striking the word language to draft an ordinance that adds the prohibition of smoking electronic smoking devices anywhere in municipal premises and public spaces, including parkland and the beach area of Atwater Park or any of its facilities.
The first part, not village owned parkland. Just the first 3 words that you said.
I make a motion?
Yeah.
To draft an ordinance that includes prohibiting the use of electronic smoking devices anywhere that smoking is currently banned, including banning the use of cigarettes and electronic smoking devices in village parkland, including the beach area at Atwater Park.
Is there a second?
I'll
Here.
second it.
Seconded by trustee Bachhorst. Now I'll open the floor for discussion.
I think I support that. It's village, any municipal property and municipal owned parkland. Let's include that part. Okay, as long as that's what it covers, it's perfect.
I just have a quick kind of procedural question. The motion is to draft. I think we already have this drafted, right? Is this good enough though in terms of giving you guidance that we recommend this?
Right now, Peter thinks he has the motion accurately for purposes of informing Nathan. The second portion of this I've also inquired about is that we have a Parks Commission. And I didn't know if it was this body's opinion to also allow them to weigh in. So I have listed that there as just a recommendation. I don't know if there's a desire to do that. It was just one thing that came to my mind as we were reviewing the information.
Can they do that and provide it to full board along with the committee's recommendation?
Sure.
Good with that.
I would support that. I don't think it needs to come back to this committee after going to the Parks Commission.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would rather the Parks Commission see what we recommended.
Yeah, good. Good.
All right.
Thank you for.
So any further discussion?
So do I need to add that to the motion? Or verbal direction is not? Okay.
So do we just all in favor? Oh,
Because I'm the note taker. I am. So I just want to clarify, if you could just look at your ordinance real quick. And section D, excuse me, section E, it's highlighted in red, probably not on your paper copies, but it says prohibition against smoking.
Yes.
And then it lists out 3 subsections, A, B, and C.
Right.
And A and B are current state statutes. Section C is where it says all municipal premises excluding parkland. So I just want to understand when I go back to talk with the village attorney that language under subsection C should say all municipal premises including parkland and Atwater Beach.
Village owned parkland.
Okay?
yes.
Is that good?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That's much more concise.
So you want to read that back?
You got it.
Got it, okay. I got it.
All right, does anyone need read back, or are we good to vote?
We're good.
Good to go.
All right, so all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3 to 0.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
6:35.
Watch your village agenda so you come back when when it's before the full board.
Not yet.
Thanks,
I will
thanks.
probably forget to.
Thanks for
Yeah, I
having
would
me.
say you gotta
Yeah, they'll work out.
I'll give my family for that. I don't know, we've got a lot of, we're mapping out a lot of areas.
Thanks.
That's got a used guy.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Really?
Or, I agree with that, or there's always